Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of my podcast. Today I am with Peter Browne, who was the voice of Alfred the hot water bottle, possibly one of Australia's most famous children's characters on Johnson and Friends.
Hi, how are you, Joseph?
I'm very good, thank you. So, just to get things started, tell me a bit about yourself and your career.
Well, I was at university and tried my hand at acting with very little immediate success, if you like. But gradually became accustomed to what was required and got bitten by the bug.
Yeah.
And eventually applied for NIDA, where I was accepted, and did the 3 years there and graduated and worked in community theatre. Did some stand-up and sketch comedy and worked on different film and television shows. Did a little bit of theatre. Then after that, started working on sort of self-devised material. We used to write and perform stuff that we do for different audiences, and eventually found ourselves into the sort of corporate world and sort of produced material for those guys for a long time for different businesses, and now I'm working as a communications coach, I guess, which is something that I enjoy doing a lot. It allows me to combine the entertainment industry experience that I have along with the business communication experience, and so helping people to communicate their ideas, to develop their content and communicate clearly and effectively is something that I'm really enjoying doing. But I guess the topic for today is about Johnson and Friends.
Yes.
And to be honest, playing the character of Alfred the hot water bottle in Johnson and Friends, well, I certainly saw it at the time as the pinnacle of my acting career. It was a very robust character, and the writer John Patterson was able to create this sort of cartoon character with incredible dimension. And I found it a terrific character to perform, particularly because of the diversity in the range of emotion or motives that the character had, and it was just a lot of fun to play. It was good. It was really good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's funny, just quickly, you mentioned when you studied at NIDA. When I spoke to Gary Scale, who was the voice of Johnson, he told me that he was actually in your graduating class, which is a crazy coincidence, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. In a way, it speaks to the fact that it's a small world, and Gary and I went through our 3 years at NIDA together and, shared a lot of experience along with all of our other colleagues. But we were a couple of years out of NIDA, maybe 4 or 5 years out of NIDA at the same time as Johnson and Friends came along, and both of us, looking for opportunities, and the opportunity jumped up, and we both were happy to grab it. And I think neither of us took off with a stellar career after NIDA, and so, the opportunities that came to us at the same time, as I say, was about after, I don't know how long it was. So, I'm thinking 4 or 5 years. It may have been more. But, we developed a fair bit of experience having left NIDA, and so we're ready to take on something like that. And both of us, had always tended towards comedy and performance. And so the timing was probably for both of us about right.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So how did you become involved in Johnson and Friends?
Oh, look, quite simply, it was an audition process, and I had the audition with Ian Munro, who was the director, of course, and I'm trying to, it's quite interesting because I first met Ian at a casting director's in Woolloomooloo, which had a fantastic office which looked over the entrance to the Carl Expressway. And this was the casting for a drama documentary, if you like, or a documentary style drama series, and this particular episode was called Custody. And so quite a gut-wrenching storyline where you would interact with the partners of a dissolving marriage or a disintegrating marriage.
Yeah. I've seen Custody. I thought it was very good, but it was kind of hard to watch because it was a very emotional production.
Yeah, that's right. And as I say, it's about a disintegrating relationship, and relationships are probably the most challenge. Some of the most challenging activities we have in our lives, really. And for young people, there is this desire to rush headlong into marriage, for whatever reason. And when it comes unstuck, it can be just so damaging. So with Ian, sitting in that office, looking over the entrance to the Carl Expressway, I walked into the room, and he's a very energetic and lovely man, and his enthusiasm and his energy just shines out of his face and his eyes, and I was attracted to that immediately, and I guess our energy just bounced off each other, and we really connected, and I understood what he was doing. I thought it was fantastic. I was really happy to be involved. We did some auditioning scenarios, and then I walked out of there and hoped for the best, and got the call that I'd been successfully engaged, which was great. And so we worked on that program for the period of time that we worked on it, a couple of months, I guess, and then as you do, you go your separate ways, and then I got a call from either Ian or my agent saying, I'm doing this show about toys under a children's bed, and one of them is a water bottle, and I'm thinking, how does that relate to the trauma of a marriage breakdown? But I guess to Ian's credit, there's a couple of things involved, I guess, as a director. Like he sort of thought, okay, this person can do this role, and I enjoy working with them, or we have a good working relationship. So let's see how that goes. So I was very fortunate to be given the opportunity to audition for the part of Alfred, the hot water bottle, the cranky hot water bottle, and was given the part, and as I said earlier, I loved it. I just thought it was a fantastic character that I could work with Ian on, and with the other actors, and it was superb. Yeah, it was good.
That's a really interesting way of things panning out, because you went from a very serious docudrama film to a children's series, which has perhaps the only time a hot water bottle has been a character in any kid show.
Yeah, I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure.
I think that was the only time. But how did you create the role of Alfred, specifically the voice?
I think there was a pomposity in the writing. There was a phrase that he would say, that Alfred would say, "blithering blazes," which was written in the very early script. And when I was a kid, I used to read Tintin, and Tintin had this character, Captain Haddock, who was a complete lunatic and a drunk, and an adventurer, and Tintin's sidekick. But he had this phrase, "billions of blue blistering barnacles," and as soon as there was blithering blazes, the whole idea of Captain Haddock being this, full of hot air, and like reacting emotionally to everything, and being cantankerous, and either hungover or lucid or drunk. They were his three states of being. And when he was hungover, he was cantankerous. When he was lucid, he was adventurous. And when he was drunk, he was either stupidly happy or ridiculously emotional. And so, that as a child, he was my favourite character. Him and Professor Cuthbert Calculus, who was hugely funny.
Yeah.
And the Thompson twins, of course. But yeah, Captain Haddock was certainly my favourite, and so there was an immediate connection there that I thought, I'd like to play the character this way. And the other thing which happened at the time was we had a puppy called Louis, who sadly died hit by a car. A beautiful blue heeler, and Louis was the runt of the litter, and he would he was a little bit he was either like he was either very, very cautious or very, very energetic. Really lovely puppy. But if things didn't go his way, or if he'd done something that we thought was a problem, he used to like shrink and lower his head and avert his eyes and try and disappear. And I just loved that characteristic, and also his sort of happiness. And I wanted to imbue the character with those qualities as well. So I sort of, Captain Haddock was an initial stimulus, but then our dog, I thought, was just had these lovely physical characteristics that, playing a water bottle, you can do anything with a water bottle, but, because it's dominated by water, in a way, and it's got a fluidity to it that and then the movement possibilities of being able to shrink and expand were really, really exciting to explore. And so, the puppy's emotional expression that was evident, totally evident in how the puppy expressed himself physically, I tried to sort of carry over into the water bottle, but not with too much technique. They were just stimuluses that I wanted to explore.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. It's really crazy to think that Alfred, just the inspiration behind that. I think that's a really nice story. In terms of costume performance, tell me a little bit about how you handled that and what it was like to physically perform as Alfred. How did the suit actually work?
Well, you imagine a foam sealed rectangle, and so at the bottom of the rectangle was an opening which was closed by very heavy Velcro. So I would crawl into the suit through that opening, or that slit in the bottom, and then I would put my feet on either sides of the rectangle, and I would have to turn my feet out so that the heels were pointing towards each other and the toes were pointing away from each other, because if I had my toes forward, you would create a foot-like shape, whereas you really wanted to follow the line of the bottom of the water bottle, if you like, when it stood, so that it looked like a rectangle and didn't look like a human inside there. So that was the first thing. And then I'd stand up to my full height, and I had my hands in the two top corners. And again, they needed to be there because activating the corners of the water bottle, the four corners of the water bottle, and having my elbows pointed out so that they could, again, continue the line of the rectangle on a downward basis. You just wanted to try and have the ability to use your body to make it fluid, to bounce on your knees and, to get the sort of water bottle shape. But it gave you this incredibly flat rectangle to create, or you could just diminish yourself by squatting down and hunching your back and make so you could make you could actually make the water bottle tiny, and huge. Yeah. And then my head was actually in the neck of the water bottle. And on my head was a helmet that I would attach underneath my chin. So that then gave me control of the funnel, if you like, at the top of the water bottle where the eyes were. And so you had to sort of think of your neck extending up about 2 feet to where the eyes were, so that when you were looking at something, you were activating this thing that was about a foot or two above your head, so that it would be looking where you wanted it to go. And again, you could recoil, you could pull your head in and extend your arms out to cover the eyes, and when you were trying to shield yourself, because Alfred was either he was either totally dominating everything that was happening and being a complete know-all, or he was the most scared of all of the toys and trying to hide and run away. He was just a ridiculous character, very funny. So, the challenges or overcoming the challenges of the suit, you had to do that physically, and basically the dominating thing was preserving the integrity of the shape so that it didn't look at all human. And, I guess, when I look at it, I think, maybe I succeeded a fair way. Sometimes you think, oh, that looks a bit human there, I don't know how, but that was the challenge. And then to make the face active, which was above your own face, and there was an A, a letter A for Alfred, obviously, in the middle of the funnel, if you like, the bottom of the funnel where the water goes into the water bottle, where it meets the top of the rectangle there. So there was an A there, and where my face was a very heavy gauze strip, so I could see through the A. So my eyes could see what I was doing, but Alfred's eyes were actually 2 or 3, probably 2 feet above my head. So you had to use those use that. Gosh, I'm actually doing all the actions while we're sitting here talking, and it just all comes back like riding a motorbike. The back of your neck is really moving around. It's quite fun. So that was that side of it, and as I say, the challenge was to make it non-human, to make it water bottle, and to have a fluidity and an emotional expression that we humans don't really exhibit beyond the age of about 4 or 5, So, when we're little, our body is just a pure expression of our emotion. But, I guess from the time we go to school and we get encouraged to control the way we behave, we start to fit into the norms, whereas, little children, their emotions come out through their body, and for a water bottle, it has to behave like a water bottle, not like a human. So that was the challenge, and that's the placement of my feet, the placement of my hands, how I used my neck to activate the face, which was above my head, and how I used my body to completely change the shape of the water bottle according to the circumstances. That's how I did that. So that's on a sort of creative level, if you like, but on a functional level. When we were in New Zealand, there were some bugs in there. It was a sweaty, stinking, like foam rubber nightmare. And It had to be fumigated on a regular basis.
Oh my god.
Uh, and I don't know if you've spoken to Gary, but
I have, yes.
and he didn't like being in the elephant costume to the extent that I think 1 or 2 seasons was enough for him.
Yes, he did the first 12 episodes.
Yes, yes, and then Archie Michael and then Jonathan Hendry
Yes.
in New Zealand. All beautiful men, really, really lovely men, and all of them, the essence of that character, they just brought it to life so
Yeah.
gloriously. Wonderful, wonderful, and each in their own way, but each absolutely true to the elephant.
For
Superb.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
They all did great. It's funny you mention how you sort of controlled the face part of Alfred with the helmet. It's almost as if these characters weren't just costumes. They were sort of like full body puppets in a sense.
Oh, well, I think so. I think that's absolutely what they were, and the people that made the costumes. I mean, again. I mean, they gave them the ability to be expressive, and I'm sure that Ian played a critical role in that. But the guys who built those characters or those puppets, but they had to give them the ability to express themselves, and all of them had largely fixed facial characteristics. You think of Macduff with that just flat plane, and so the only way that the girls who played Macduff could activate that character's face was by a range of movement of the flat surface, whereas Alfred was, and that retains the integrity of the squeeze box, whereas Alfred was more malleable, being rubber, so his eyes could bounce around a little bit. And then the truck, with the windscreen wiper eyes, they could shift and Doug and I don't know if it was Doug. No, Doug did the voice, but
yeah, it was a bloke called Bruce Wedderburn and then Matthew Chamberlain.
Yeah, Bruce and Matty, they really worked the windscreen and the bonnet of the car to give a range of expression. And the puppet makers had made those, like fluid in their movement, so the foam quality was able to give a range of expression. And, then of course, the elephant with its ears that could be moved around, its trunk, of course, and all of those different things. So I think that a lot of the work had been done in how could the characters express themselves by Ian and the costume makers or the puppet makers or the designers. They did you just think what a brilliant job they did, because by the time we got into it, we were just coming to terms with the challenge of how do we get the most out of this suit, and the suit was not inhibited in each of the characters' way. The integrity of the object that the character was squeeze box, an elephant, a truck, a robot, a water bottle. These objects had their physical integrity built into the costume, which, and as I say, then our challenge was to really animate that.
Maybe because I loved it so much as a kid, but every time I watch Johnson, it's almost as if I just sort of accept it as normal. But like hearing it explained in such detail is fascinating because there was such an intense amount of work put into it. All aspects of the production.
There's no doubt about that. And I think one of the really interesting things about Johnson and Friends is that when you look at Johnson and Friends, the bedroom, and the walls of the bedroom have this grey like wooden panel, or panels, like how do you say, vertical pieces of wood that are all sort of stacked together and painted grey, and that's like the bottom of the wall. And then going up from the bottom of from that grey panel, which in real life would be about knee length, I guess, was a light blue wall with yellow stars on it. And yes. Now, when you go to Toy Story, that's the same design.
Oh my god, I never noticed that.
I'll have a look at it. It's recall seeing Toy Story and having a discussion with Ian. Oh my God, have you seen that? And I'm sure Ian, was the first one to notice it, and which was splendid homage. Either that or a complete coincidence. But that's it's not a tangent, because you're talking about the effort that's gone into to create the series, and the fact that Pixar Studios may have seen that design and thought that's a great design of an archetypal cartoonish kid's bedroom, and we want to pay homage to that or whatever, or the fact that it's coincidentally two great designers have had the same sort of idea. Whatever the circumstance, it's that sort of thinking that goes into a production at every level. And so, the walls, the beds, the doorways, the door handles, the windows, the way the windows operate, the knobs on the windows that open and shut, the cupboard, all of these different things, the integrity of that environment. And then the joy of the workplace was never, ever unsatisfying, because when you would walk into that bedroom, you're walking into a wonderland, a physical wonderland that is physical. It's actually real. You're standing underneath a bed, and it's 4 feet above your head is the bottom of the bed, is the underneath of the bed. When you're on the bed, you're like 12 feet in the air, and you're surrounded by these walls and windows. They only go up halfway because the studio's not high enough. And then, the way the lighting was managed to reflect different times of the day, whether it was early morning or whether it was late evening, with sunsets created with lighting on the cyclorama outside the windows, bright sunshine pouring through the curtains into the room, and so you've got areas of light and shade within the room. Nighttime, and then they would put up a different cyclorama of black velvet with little spotted lights that would create this magical stars. It was the most magical place to go to work and to walk into, and all of these people standing around with their different jobs, the cameramen who were using big cranes, or there was one guy, Kim Batterham, probably 6'7" or 6'8", and he was like a human crane, the way he would use his body to be small and large to get camera movement that would be large enough to register on the toys in the background. It was just a magical environment in making things happen. As tiny people in a large physical world, it was. I loved it. I mean, obviously there were days when you'd had enough, but I would say most of the time I was just really happy to be there doing what we were doing.
Hearing stories like that, really make me appreciate the show even more, because it's clear a lot of love went into it, and that's always great, because in the TV industry that's not always the case.
Oh, I think every industry is tough, like there's a bottom line, and if the challenges of costs and expenses versus income, that's really tough, and it puts pressure on. Yeah, but we were lucky. We had to work without that pressure, of course, and that's the joy of the collaborative effort is, Ron Saunders, and you got to take your hat off to him, because he had to firstly find the budget, find the partners who would give the money to make this thing happen, and then do it again for the next series.
Yeah, and the thing with Johnson is it was such an international success. I'm sure you're aware it was in almost 100 countries, and because of that, the international success, that's what helped it to garner more series. The third series, shot in Avalon in New Zealand, was entirely funded by Fuji TV in Japan, and then the fourth series was funded entirely by Fox in the United States. So that's, the international success of Johnson really helped it.
Yeah, it was an incredible effort to go on for so long, and with so many different partners, all coming to the party.
Oh yeah, and just quickly back to what you were saying about costume work. I've remembered I have this really funny bit of footage I'll have to show you where it's got Ian on one end of Alfred. I think he's the front end, and then you on the other end, and he sort of throws up the front part, and then you sort of dive into Alfred, and then the camera sort of pans up, and it just focuses on Alfred's face, and it's the weirdest bit of footage I've ever seen. It shows you sort of becoming Alfred, and it's fascinating.
Yes, look, I don't recall, it was so long ago, but that sounds like, there were a number of ways of getting into the suit, and I think Ian was very helpful in being my dresser from time to time.
Oh yeah, that was a very, very early piece of footage from the first series, so I'll have to show you that at some point.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Do you recall much about recording the Johnson music album with Chris Neal?
Look, the songs were delightful. Yeah, I mean, it was a job that we did. We all got together. We went to the studio, I think out Chatswood Way or something, and sat around and did rehearsals, and then got in there and did our group and individual bits.
You're not much of a toy when your battery's gone flat. If you can't be switched on, well, that's sort of that.
Thrown in the corner, left under the bed. A toy's not much good when its battery's dead.
Toys, toys, wonderful toys. Great things for girls and good things for boys. Toys made of metal and plastic and wood. All sorts of toys, so special, so good. Yeah! I'm a water bottle, and when my water's hot, Michael puts his arms around me and likes me quite a lot. He warms his feet, there's a tingle in his toes. His tummy feels quite yummy, there's a blush upon his nose. When the winter gales are blowing, when the icy rain falls down, they snuggle up together underneath the island down. Michael puts his arms around him, for he is nice and hot. He's the hottest water bottle, and he really hits the spot. I really hit the spot. Oh, he's a water bottle, and when my water's hot, Michael puts his arms around me and likes me quite a lot. I warm his feet, there's a tingle in his toes. His tummy feels quite yummy, there's a blush upon his nose.
So it was quite a functional experience, but enjoyable, and the songs were magical, really lovely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Chris did a great job, and John was the lyricist, of course.
Yes. Well, we can't cut him out of the equation ever. I mean, I don't know how Johnson and Friends was initially catalysed. I don't know whether it was a conversation between Ron and John, or Ian and Ron, or where it came from, or whether it was an idea that John pitched. I really don't know where it came from, but his imagination to be able to juggle all of those characters and create all of those storylines and and create all that magic. I mean, we're all odd human beings, and John was sometimes struggled with his place in the world, and yet the magic and the joy that he could express. We would read the scripts and just be exhilarated by the world that he created.
Oh yeah. Well, he was a fantastic writer, and it deeply saddened me when Ian told me in 2016 that he passed away. I'm sure I never got the chance to speak to John, but I'm sure he would have loved to, met somebody who was fascinated with Johnson at the age of 20.
I'm sure he would have been thrilled.
Yeah. It's funny because I do know a little bit of the story. So Ian and Ron were inspired by a puppet show they saw with a gigantic foam truck, and they got in touch with the puppet designer, who was Caroline Jones, and she was the one who ended up building all the Johnson characters, and that sort of happened. And then John got involved, and he created the whole world. He wrote every single episode, he wrote the books, and he wrote the all the song lyrics. So it's very hard to find, in TV shows where one person does all the writing. But what's a mystery to me is where the character names come from. They're very random.
Diesel, Macduff, Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, writers get it spot on, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, Ian told me John never told him where they came from, and he's the only person who would have known. So, well, perhaps it's more magical, the fact that it's a mystery. Yeah. So what was your most memorable moment on the show, or your favorite episode?
Oh gosh. The ones where we would, make a rocket ship and go to the moon were always fun.
Oh yeah.
There was a continuous pattern with Alfred where the toys would be doing something, and Alfred would come roaring out of under the bed and abuse them all for making so much noise, and then he would sort of look at what they were doing and become interested in it, and then ask them to explain, and then get so excited about the opportunity or the adventure, and then try and take over, and then oftentimes would get told to go away and stop dominating, and then they would do something together, So in a way, the whole series was a lot about conflict resolution.
It is, and I think it was a fantastic series for kids because it taught them real life lessons, but at the same time it had that tongue-in-cheek sort of sense of humor, and even a couple times John chucked in a couple of jokes that the adults would understand.
Yes. I mean, particularly with that age group that the show was aimed at, you would imagine that a lot of the time the children are watching with mum and dad. So
yeah,
I think that was always a thought to have that in mind.
Yeah,
that mum and dad would be watching too. And yes, John absolutely had that there, that tongue in cheek.
There's one quote from Johnson where he climbs up on the chest of drawers in episode 5, Helpless, in the first series, and he just says, "I'm so high, I've never been this high before," and I'm just thinking, that's deliberate. So, one thing I find particularly amazing is that you were willing to continue your role when production moved to New Zealand. What inspired you to do that?
Well, 3 months' work is always appealing.
Yeah, of course.
As an actor, you you get offered bits and pieces, but a continuous engagement like that is very appealing. Good for the bank balance, if you like. Pays the rent and keeps the wolves from the door. So that's an important consideration in the sense of like, can you afford to knock back work is one side, but I think when it was mooted, I put my hand up, and I remember having conversations with Ian that I would like to do it, and that what I could offer was a bridge between the Australian production of the scripts and the New Zealand production of the scripts for the actors, if you like, that I could have a continuity of character, if you like, and a continuity of approach, and also even my knowledge of what Gary was doing and what Archie was doing, and what Bruce had done, and others. I can't remember everybody's name, but like if there were situations about with the New Zealand actors, like to be able, because you need to hit the ground running from the first episode you shoot, just to be able to say, well, this was how Bruce did it, activated the eyebrows, or this is what that looked like, and then I guess the energy and the vibrancy and the size of the performance. It's funny, it's like the difference between talking to people one-on-one and speaking at Capitol Hill. One is just a conversation. The other is almost operatic, if you think of Bill Clinton or Martin Luther King, the way that they have to project to vast crowds. When you're playing these soft toys coming alive in a kid's bedroom, and they're bigger than you are in size, and yet they're smaller than you are in dimension, you have to really bring them to life, and so it requires a size of performance. And I guess I felt that I could offer that to the production, if you like a continuity of performance, and I think we all agreed it was a good idea, and I was very grateful.
Oh yeah, and it's sort of I'd imagine you sort of acted as sort of like a guide to the new actors who'd never done that sort of work before, like Jonathan and Matt, and I think I can't remember who the others were, but yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And yeah. Sarah Body and
Sarah.
Elizabeth. And then later on, Victoria was recast, and Leighton Young was the costume performer.
Yes.
Oh, he was really good. He could run in that thing.
Yes, he was a very athletic guy, dancer as well as actor, I think. So yes, he really brought it to life. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, that was the opportunity that we all had, was to bring these things to life. And yes, whereas Deb, who played the dinosaur in Australia,
did the voice, yeah.
She did the voice. No, that's right. She never played the.
Yeah.
I can't imagine her playing the character.
Yeah, that would have been. I think Victoria would have been one of the hardest to play, because Leighton, when I spoke to him, he told me he legitimately had to run on all fours, and I don't know how anybody could do that.
Yeah. Maybe the character only surfaced in the New Zealand episodes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what happened. She was introduced in Series 3.
Yes.
It was an idea by John, Ian, and Ron. They thought to introduce a new character, and I think it was a great decision. When they did the American version of Johnson, which I'm sure you're aware of, you were the only character who remained the same. I'm aware you had to re-record some of the earlier episodes. Do you recall much about this?
No, not really. But, I mean, once we got out of the flow of, the 3 months to make a series, then when you were called back in to do voice stuff, sometimes you'd just go to a studio and you'd be given, random lines from different episodes to sync up, and it's just it has to be an efficient process. So they'd line up the tape, the guide lights would come across the screen, and you'd deliver your lines to sync with the performance, and then when they were happy with that, then we'd go on to the next one. So sometimes you'd be walking in and what are we doing this for? Oh, right, the American. Oh, okay, yeah. And then you'd go back and go about your business and go about your day's work, or you pick up the kids from school or whatever it was, So some of those re-recording, they've just sort of vanished in the mists of memory, really.
No, I can understand that. That's, it wasn't anything physical, and you only had to re-record the first 26, and I think a couple of lines in the last set.
It was me! What the blithering blazes! It was me! What the blithering blazes!
What really confuses me is they changed bits of the script, so they changed wardrobe to closet and torch to flashlight, and but in the third series, that set of episodes, they changed that for the Americans, but because they used your dialogue stem, the exact same track they used in the Australian for that one, you just hear Johnson, Macduff, all these other characters talking about going to the closet, and then Alfred pops in, he's like, oh, I can't wait to go to the wardrobe, and I'm just like, it's the most inconsistent thing. And I think, I was speaking to Ian, and he said, that was an oversight on Fox's part, but the thing is, they were the ones who wanted to revoice it in the first place.
Yeah. But, it may be a sort of an attempt at cultural difference, because Alfred had a sort of an English accent,
Yeah.
And so I wonder if they thought, well, that's Alfred wouldn't call it a closet, he would call it a wardrobe. I wonder if they ever thought of it in those terms, or maybe it was an oversight.
Oh, yes.
The toys followed the pink thread until it finally disappeared into the wardrobe.
Do you think the treasure might be in there, Diesel?
Oh, it might be, but Squeaky's in there. She might have claimed the treasure already.
Unless she doesn't know that it is a treasure.
Hey.
Look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll knock on the wardrobe door, but we won't tell Squeaky what we're looking for. Agreed?
Agreed.
Knock on the door, Macduff.
Oh, yes.
The toys followed the pink thread until it finally disappeared into the closet.
Do you think the treasure might be in there, Diesel?
Oh, it might be, but Squeaky's in there. She might have claimed the treasure already.
Unless she doesn't know that it is a treasure.
Ooh.
What?
Look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll knock on the wardrobe door, but we won't tell Squeaky what we're looking for. Agreed?
Agreed.
Knock on the door, Macduff.
Well, it makes sense in that case, but I think that is pretty cool. And I'll be completely honest with you, I'm glad they retained your voice, because I don't think anybody else could play Alfred. I can understand it being in a different language, but in English, I can't picture an American playing Alfred. I reckon you were the perfect choice for that role.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say so. I think there might be a couple of guys over in America who do a brilliant job.
Oh yeah. So there was an episode I really liked of Johnson and Friends called Alfred and Alphonse, in which Alfred tries to start a rock band and one of his friends from the hot water bottle factory comes. The voice was definitely provided by you, and the thing that's a mystery to me is how the costumes were done, because at the end there's a shot where there's about 80 different water bottles, and I'm wondering if you remember anything about this specific episode.
Look, I think that was all done on green screen, and then just carefully, they got their angles right and shot it that way. I think I'm not sure if there was a difference between the two suits. I can't recall. I sort of remember the idea, but it's a little bit it's lost in the mists.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been done by green screen. I mean, everything in those days, CGI was really early doors there. It was very early days. So everything was pretty much done live. We just made things happen, manually, I think. But green screen was obviously a technology that was quite advanced at that stage. And it's just the challenges of separating the object from the background, really, with lighting. Getting your rim lighting so that there's no bleeding between the object and the green screen. So I'm pretty sure that's how it was done. And then Alfred and Alphonse being on screen at the same time. I think I have this slight recollection there may have been two suits, and it may have been Leighton that operated. I just have this vague memory of just going through with him what I would do for Alfred, and so that he could activate the suit. But look, seriously, I don't recall too much with any clarity.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I was about to theorize that's what might have happened, because incidentally that was one of the episodes that Victoria the dinosaur was not featured in. So there are some shots where they're there at the same time, and it just makes me think, and they sort of, it's too good to be like edited in. You can tell there's actually two costumes. Yeah. So I thought, that Leighton must have done that. I think as like you said, it might have been green screen. The thing about that is, Ian told me he never touched green screen for Johnson. So what I think they did, I think they used a similar technique. I don't know what the term is, but like it was like a camera trick where they'd leave the camera in the same spot and then get maybe you or someone else to perform or it would have been you, to perform all the stuff, and then because it's the same angle and same positioning of the camera, they'd edit them so it looked like there were two of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Sort of a split screen, sort of, overlay or whatever you would call it. Yeah. But in terms of, that's interesting. Ian saying no green screen. I mean, I trust his memory better than mine, because I was just thinking about it. But I know we did look at green screen in Avalon. I think we did a green screen shoot once, and that was on a pilot program, and I think it was to do with a little aeroplane or something. I asked Ian about that, but I think that was an experiment that they just thought, no, we're not going to do that anymore. But yeah, without, no, I mean, I can see the fixed camera and just having us standing in different places around the set and recording, and then just overlay until you create the look of 1,000 moving Alfreds.
I think that's what they did, because they used that technique a lot in Johnson, and because of that it looked real. But just while I think of it, did you do all your own stunts as Alfred? Because in the last series in particular, there were some crazy things that just, I don't know how they would have done it.
Look, I think we did. There was no stunt people as such that I can recall. But we, the way we did things was, as I say, it was quite manual, and we sort of, I mean, it was a great show because it was very collaborative. Like we obviously had the script as a starting point, and then the action, which was indicated by the script. And sometimes the script needed a little bit of work. You know, you needed to see what he was getting at, and then think, well, maybe we need these little additions or deletions or changes to bring to life what John was trying to realise. But then in the action, sometimes the action was problematic, that the script suggested, and also sometimes the action that the script suggested was, you would think, hey, why don't we do this, and then you could do things like, springboard gags, where somebody's standing somewhere and somebody jumps and the water bottle gets catapulted, into the bed, or
yes,
things like that.
Yes.
And some of those ideas were ours, we sort of, because it was like a cartoon, like it wasn't a real world. You didn't have to be true to the laws of action, like something could be catapulted 30 or 40 feet through the air and land in a corner and just get up, shake their head and walk away, because they're a soft toy. You throw soft toys against the wall and then you pick them up and play with them again. They don't break bones or anything, So
yeah,
we sort of realised, that we had this license, I guess, and so, sometimes the script, as I said, suggested something that we exaggerated or extrapolated, particularly into humour, like funny things happening, basically. And it was all, we'd do it manually. So some things that you would think, oh my God, this we can make this crazy thing happen. But you would do it with a series of shots rather than a complete shot, or you would do it in ways that you'd fall off screen and then you'd land on the floor, but the difference but when you fell off screen you actually landed on a crash mat, for example, and when you landed on the floor,
yeah, that's right.
So when the sequences cut together, it could look impossible or very dramatic. So I think the way that we got around some of those things was, as I say, quite manual and thoughtful, but using the editing techniques and shot making techniques to exaggerate action.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying about that sort of stuff, there's a very funny episode where Johnson's dancing around on the bed and they can't see him properly and for some reason think he's an elf or something, so they catapult a pillow onto the bed and he just completely falls down, and if you look very carefully you can see that when the shot of Johnson falling, there's no one in the suit, it's just been dropped off the edge. It's hilarious.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there were things like that, and you had, you sort of had the challenge of, because once you throw a suit, it becomes an inanimate object, and so you did have the challenge of how can, it looks splat, it looks dead, so we used to do silly things to try and keep it animated in the throw, so and that could be just the way you'd hold it, or or just silly things,
Oh yeah.
but it was fun. It used to get quite tedious on the set. It was just draining, and you'd and we used to have fun, like when we weren't on set, we'd be enjoying ourselves and talking or playing some sort of game. Leighton used to do fantastic designs on the computer very early, sort of digital designs. A very talented guy, and when we would hear that they wanted us on set, Matt and I would frequently hide.
Oh my god.
We would frequently hide. So when we heard the people were looking for us on set, we would hide, and we would do really annoying things to people. We would, there were lots of different doorways, so we would, go through doorways and make our way onto the set without people knowing. And so these people are out looking for us and calling for us. And then we'd just sort of innocently walk onto the set ready to go on. And then these people who were looking for us would frantically come back and say, we can't find them anywhere. And there we were. We thought that was hilarious, but it was pretty unfair.
Oh, that's great, because in the set like that, there'd be hundreds of hiding spots.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there were. And little sleeping spots, and yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like how the only ways out were through a trapdoor in the back of the wardrobe and through the actual door.
Goodness me, you know all the tricks.
Well, if I hadn't spoken to Ian, I wouldn't have known that. But I've never actually seen the trapdoor, so that it was never visible in an episode. Although Ian once made a sneaky cameo in one of the episodes, because they were, I'm sure you remember the episode where Alfred took over the bed and they staged a revolution to get him back, because he kept throwing pillows at everybody.
It was called the Battle of the Bed, I believe.
Yes, that's it, from the second series. The funny thing about that, there's a long shot where you just see them sort of, Johnson sort of going up on the bed, and you can see someone walking around under the bed, and I'm 90% sure it was Ian, because that's where he was stationed with his monitors and stuff. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, very funny.
One of the things you mentioned, things they'd shot at Avalon, one of the things they'd done there was, because Johnson was shot on 1-inch tape, and then for the last two series it was shot on digital Betacam, but one thing that I found really fascinating, and I've seen a clip of, they actually shot a 35mm trailer, like as a test for a potential film.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you remember that, but seeing
Yes.
Johnson and friends on 35mm film in that sort of quality, I really wish the whole thing had been shot on film.
Yeah, it would have been fun. Yes, I do recall that. Yeah.
Kind of related. Tell me a little bit about your role and performance as Aristotle in the Boffin series, which was produced by, same company.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lovely series as well. It was it was basically explaining some simple scientific principles to young kids through some characters who lived under the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And I worked very closly with Deb Kennedy on that, and
Yes.
wonderful actress, and got the most fabulous voice.
Oh yeah.
And so we would be conducting experiments and then explaining theories, and it was just, again, like, because they were gremlins or whatever they were, I don't know what sort of characters they were. Boffins.
I've got no. Yeah.
Just like had sort of, they were human in form, in the sense that they walked on their legs and expressed themselves with their arms and did things with their hands, but they had odd alien type heads, with big eyes, like like frogs or whatever, I don't know. And
Yeah.
and then had human accoutrements, like a lab jacket and stuff like that. So it was lovely characters and fabulous situations, and again the magic of the big set. And this big set was under the kitchen cupboard and the kitchen sink.
Yes.
I think we shot in the old wharves where Foxtel is now. I think something like that, over in White Bay, or
Yeah, it was in Piermont. Boffins is an interesting case because it never actually went to air in Australia. There was a whole thing where the ABC didn't air it, but they released it to video, and I must say I was incredibly fortunate as a child to go into the video shop, and I saw the Film Australia logo on one of the tapes, and I was like, oh, this must be like Johnson. So I borrowed it, and I watched the first 4 episodes as I think I was about 5 years old or something, and I'd forgotten about the show. I loved it, but I'd forgotten about it. And then all these years later, I started researching Johnson again, and I found the word Boffins. I'm like, this seems familiar. So then I went on eBay, and there was a VHS tape, so I bought that, and I watched it again, and I was like, oh my god, I loved this as a kid. But as sad as it is to say, I'm probably one of the few people who remembers it.
Well, isn't that funny? I didn't know. I had, again, being a selfish actor, we got to play the part and bank the check. And my memory of what happened to it afterwards, or knowledge of what happened to it afterwards, is quite scant.
Oh, yeah. And it's especially funny because it didn't air on TV in Australia, per se, but I've got a copy of the theme song in Hebrew. It aired in Israel, it aired in Canada, it aired in Portugal. It went to places, it didn't air in Australia. Whereas...
Well, that's Ron. Yeah. That's Ron out there selling.
Oh, yeah.
What a good fellow.
Yeah.
וגם הדה, שני שובבים קטנים שמחפשים רק לשחק ולעשות חיים.
איזה כיף! מה, גם הם רוצים להיות מדענים?
מה ילמדו השניים מזוג המדענים? לצפות בעוד ניסוי חדש, כולנו מוזמנים.
קדימה! גם אנחנו רוצים! יש!
Yeah, and with Johnson, it went everywhere. It went to Japan, which it was a massive success in Japan. I'm sure you know. I went to Japan. It was big in the UK as well because the BBC were broadcasting it. Fox in America, then they completely reversioned it. It went to Russia, all the European countries, France, Canada. I think Johnson went to everywhere except North Korea. Even the South Koreans bought Johnson. Yeah.
Maybe there's a market.
Well, I think it was the license rights were cheap, and it was easy to sort of dub into other languages because the mouths didn't really move. And
yes,
it was a charming show. I think I was worried with the American version because the thing they do with localized kids shows is they often change the soundtrack, and I thought you cannot have Johnson and Friends without Chris Neal's fantastic underscore and theme song. But no, they kept it, and whenever they felt the episodes were too quiet, they actually had Chris write new music, and I said that I'm not a big fan of Fox, but I think that's probably one of the smartest things they've done, retaining the original composer. So, just back to Boffins quickly. How exactly did Aristotle's costume work? I'd imagine it was sort of similar to Johnson with the removable head, but the thing is that they had clothes. So were those like actual clothes, or was there like a full suit, or was it just the sort of gloves and the legs and the head?
Look, I think we had we had the purple hair. So I think I can't recall specifically, but I think we had leggings at least that started above the knee. The hair went above the knee and down to the feet, and the feet were like big shoes from memory, that were built into the leggings from memory, and then the arms, same sort of thing, that the purple hair would start around the elbow and go down to the hands, which were gloves, because I think they were sort of frog-like hands. But I don't recall. I'm just really testing my memory. Now, whether that was a one-piece suit, like a onesie or something that you would just go into and stitch up at the back, I'm not sure, or whether it was separate legs and extended gloves, I can't remember. And then we would put on over that base, if you like, we would put on the lab coats that would then complete the picture. and then the head on top and sort of tucked into the lab coat, so it all was coherent.
Yeah. Well, just in conclusion, are there any funny moments that you remember from Johnson? Any funny stories that you might be able to tell that will amuse the viewers?
I think that there was one time where we were in New Zealand and Alfred had to fly through the air, and the prop guy, a lovely guy, very, very funny New Zealand guy, he was trying to figure out a way to rig the water bottle to fly through the air, and it was taking a long time, and I grabbed Matthew or someone and just said, "Come on, let's just throw the bloody thing." and so we got the cameraman, look, get your shot, tell us where you want it to enter, and we just threw we threw the water bottle through the air, and the poor prop guy was came and said, "I've got a solution, it's okay, we've got the shot."
Oh my god. I think I remember that episode.
Yeah, I don't know, and so that was one thing that I recall. But look, there would have been loads of incidents, but it's many years ago now. It was last century that was filmed.
Yeah.
We were together for a long time. There were some hysterical moments. There were moments of deep frustration and anger. Relationships were tested, but I think that what was achieved, everybody would be incredibly proud of.
Oh, for sure. And I'm gonna say this. It sort of sounds like the relationships the characters had in the show as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make you feel old, but as of next year, Johnson will be 30 years old.
Almost as old as myself.
Well, in retrospect, what were your thoughts on the Johnson series? Did you enjoy performing as what is likely the only anthropomorphic hot water bottle to ever grace the screen?
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was a privilege to bring a water bottle to life. It was a challenge, and it was a privilege. I really, really enjoyed it. It was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, Peter. Just before you go, I was wondering if the viewers could hear a quick message from Alfred.
I don't know what's going on out there. What are you people up to? Now look here. I've been trying to sleep for the last 20 minutes, and you people have been banging and blathering and... What's that you're doing? What? Are you building a rocket ship? Are we going to the moon? I'm an incredible astronaut, don't you know? I can fly these things on the seat of my pants. Blithering blazes, what more do you want, man?
Oh, all right. Thank you very much, Peter and Alfred. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak to me.
No problem. It's been very, very a good fun to relive all of those wonderful memories.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I'll see you guys later.